Ash. This is Raven, and I'm kind of winging it. So I want to start with the very beginning of my testimony when I was a child and what I had to witness, and I think how it kind of affected me as I was growing up. So grew up in a small town, I guess. Lived in North Carolina as a child. Didn't have a toilet. We had to go outside and use the outhouse. It was that pretty awesome. So one day I was eating. I was in a high chair and old enough to feed myself eating cereal. And I heard this loud thump hit the ground. And I looked down and I noticed it was my mom. She was reaching up to me and, shouting out my name, asking for me to help her. And I'm thinking, what can I do? I'm small. I couldn't help. And I looked and I noticed that her husband at the time held a shotgun to her face and says, "You're dead now, B." And I could hear her saying that he knows what's going on. He knows what's going on. And her husband said, "No, he doesn't. No, he doesn't." And she said, "Yes, yes, he does. Yes, he does." He says, "You can't do this. You can't do this." And I knew that if he shot my mother, I knew that I was going to be next. He would have killed me. And maybe I was at the age of maybe 1 or 2. Only thing I know is I was old enough to be able to feed myself. And that's all I really remember. Sometime after that, I had a supernatural experience in that house. It was really weird. I don't know if this makes any sense, but it was really dark and it was really pitch black in the house. And so black I could even see my hands. Things you just seem to remember. And I seen these 2 black shadows in front of me, and they were whispering, saying, "Can you see us?" I was like, "Can you see us?" It was like a female in a male's voice. It's like, no, he can't see us. He can't see us. But the funny thing is, the house was so black. The shadows seemed to be blacker than the darkness itself. I remember waking up and telling my mom about this dream. Well, it wasn't a dream, but she said I was only dreaming. It was just a dream. And I'm like, wow, thanks, Mom. So years later, as I grew up, I totally forgot about the experience. And one day, I asked her, and she told me, "No, you just had a dream." Almost in the same breath, she invites someone over, maybe about an hour later, and sits down and proceeds to have the same conversation with her that I was supposed to have with her. I didn't get any closure because she pretty much told the whole entire story to her friend, as if I wasn't even there. I love you, Mom, but that kind of bothered me. So through my walk with God, I was told, and I'm sure a lot of you guys were told, that there was just some things you could never be forgiven for, and you're a sinner, and God can never forgive you. And I believed that lie. And I started looking for something else to believe in that wouldn't send me to hell. So I started to, slowly but surely, I became an atheist. From an atheist, I became agnostic. And I knew from that point there had to be something else out there. But I didn't want that something else sending me to hell. When I was a teenager in high school, I saw the movie The Craft. And that gave me some inspiration, like, okay, what else is out there? And lo and behold, as I was in high school, somehow or another, I met a friend. And through this mutual friend, I wound up meeting a practicing pagan. Started talking with him, and I told him how I felt about things and how I saw the world and how I saw life as a teenager, because you think you know everything, but you really don't. He suggested some books to read. And I picked up these books and I started reading, and I was absolutely astonished that all my thoughts, everything that I thought I knew of this world, was all in those books. Crazy, right? And I'm thinking, wow, this is really speaking to me, so this must be what I am. I am a pagan. And so I started studying. And one night, I was reading through this book. It was, I know it was a book by Scott Cunningham, or it could have been, Uncle Bucky's Big Blue Book of Witchcraft. And I saw self-dedication. So, just like communion, as you would as a Christian, I gave communion to, there's no way of lightly putting it, to the devil, because it's what it is. I gave communion to Satan, and I offered myself to Satan, and I dedicated myself with, at the time I could afford to drink wine, so I think I had grape juice and some bread, and I gave myself communion, and I dedicated myself to this religion and to this practice and to this belief. Slowly but surely, I just started gathering, accumulating more books, more stuff to read. I started going to covens. I became a member of a coven that was widely known in Tennessee, in Knoxville. I don't want to give out the name. So I became friends with them, and it became a family. It really felt like this is who I was and this is where I belong. And slowly but surely through my life as a practicing pagan, had an idol, had a statue. I worshipped a pagan goddess from Celtic mythology, the Morgan. From that point, I dove into some deeper occultish stuff. Well, I was in the occult, but it got deeper because my fun-loving hippie ways became very dark and very sinister. I thought I saw the world for what it really was, and more and more that I looked, and more I started hating Christians. I started getting a really bad representation of Christianity, and I started hating Christians. Slowly but surely, I didn't realize it, but I was a Satanist. I became a Satanist. And I didn't really label myself as a Satanist because I didn't want to tag myself to that label. But in reality, that's what I really was. And I hated Christianity, and I hated Christians because of how they represented their God. I thought they were a bunch of hypocrites. I would laugh at them when they celebrated their holidays because they didn't know the roots and the origin of these holidays. I just thought they were really weak and pathetic. And they believed in a weak and pathetic God. And it's something I never want to be a part of. I started delving into magic. I started, without even reading in books, these familiar spirits, these thoughts in your head, they teach you and they tell you things, what to do, how to get things that you want. For me, it was sex. So I learned and I taught myself and listened to the demons in my head basically tell me how to perform sex magic. And it worked. It worked. And I won't go into details on what I did and how I got it to work, but it worked. Involving candles and involving the act of sex. And could have gotten in a lot of trouble. But it never happened. And later on, I started getting to really heavy drugs. I smoked meth, tried meth. I can say, oh, you tried meth? Yeah, I tried it 6 times. I can remember my experience, and the last experience that I had was I was so high, I didn't sleep for like 3 days. My eyes were bloodshot. Yeah, my eyes were bloodshot. I felt something pop in my eyeball because I was up and I didn't sleep. And I thought maybe I had something in my eye. No, my eyeball, it popped, the blood vessel, and I had blood filling up above my eyes because I didn't get enough rest. Went up and looked at myself in the mirror, and I saw myself, literally I saw myself stick my tongue out at myself, and I'm like, well, what does that say about me? I couldn't sleep that night. Of course, you can't really sleep on methamphetamines. And what really made me stop was I was thinking about, well, what would my grandmother think of me? What would my mom think of me? What my loved ones would think of me if they found out I was really, doing this harsh drug. And that's what made me stop. Thank God. And
my mother and my grandma, the thought of them made me not do stuff too.
Yeah. And later on, I moved to Cleveland, Tennessee. My best friend, my buddy, and I still love him to this day. Won't give away his name, but I love him. I really do. But we moved to Cleveland, Tennessee, and that's where my adventure started. My didn't realize it, but I was pretty much setting myself up for failure, but in a positive way. Things wasn't working out between me and my friend. His life was going downhill, and it was a self-reflection on myself to think of, do I really want the same lifestyle? You know, no offense to my buddy, but he was going through a hard time. And I didn't really want the same thing for myself. So I started doing some self-reflecting, and the more I self-reflected, the more I started getting lost. Digging deep inside of everything that I knew and everything that I believed in just kind of led me nowhere. I started feeling really empty and hollow inside. Nothing worked, nothing helped. To my prayers to the goddess, my pagan ways, you know, my hatred for Christianity, it just, nothing filled that void inside me. It felt dark and hollow. Started working at a restaurant, and I met my spiritual brother. We'll call him Michael. That's part of his name. And I met my spiritual mother, and her name was Karen. And they really helped me. They really believed in me. And when things were at its worst, I decided to leave my friend because I just thought it was just better for me. You know, no fault to him. I was just looking for something better, something different for myself. And things got to the point where I would stay there. And when I was working, me and my brother would talk about, you know, God, and I told him that I was a pagan, and he respected me. And when I was working there, I didn't know this, but apparently people were taking bets to see who was going to win this fist fight, a Christian between a pagan, who was going to piss each other off first, and God knows what was going to happen after that. No, so none of that really happened. He really cared about me, and that was something I never experienced from a Christian before. And I started going to church because I just didn't really want to go back to my roommate's house. That's where I was staying at the time, sleeping on the couch. I just didn't really want to go there anymore. I just didn't feel comfortable. So I started going to church. My first experience at church was the way that I was dressed. My first day at church, I was dressed in black leather pants. Yeah, I could fit into black leather pants at one time. I had my demoniac boots, eyeliner, you know, black nail polish. Nothing wrong with that. I still see there's nothing wrong with it now, but that's how I first time went to church. Had my Dimmu Borgir shirt on, Death Cult Armageddon, you know, still a metalhead. And the pastor, Georgia Sister Ely, love you, Georgia Sister Ely. She looked at me. She looked me up and down. No, remember, she's a woman of color, so she looked at me down. She's like, And she looked at me. I'm like, oh, here we go. And she looked me up and down, and she looked at my boots. She's like, where'd you get them boots? Those are nice. I'm like, I don't know what to say. I'm like, thank you. So that was my first experience. And I'm glad because I came back because the way that she treated me. I wasn't expecting that at all. And it took a long, long time for me I didn't realize it, but I was slowly being converted to Christianity. God had a plan for me, and I didn't even know what that plan was. I got tricked. That's what happened. I got tricked. And I just kept on going. And one day there was a song by Mercy Me, I Can Only Imagine. Now I've heard this song a lot of times, and it never really affected me. But a lot of things were leading up to that event. where I became a Christian second time. Oh, sorry, a second time. Yeah, and it really moved me, and I was basically living with them at that time, on and off, trying to keep the peace with my friend. And when that song came on, it hit me really hard. And my first reaction to that was to run, because I suffered and I battled with depression all my life because of a lot of things I've gone through as a child that no child should ever have to go through. Mm-hmm. And I feel really sorry and sad for any child that had to go through what I had to go through. That's a different topic altogether. But that song, put me on that path. Music really helped me. So I remember getting up because it was altar call. Like every Sunday, it was an altar call, and it was time. And I remember walking up to that altar, feeling so small, and I was taking all these little bitty baby steps, just little bitty tiny baby steps, And my spiritual mother, she looked at me and she says, "Are you ready?" And nobody knew what was going on. And I was waiting for Pastor George, Sister Ely, to be there, but she was away on a business trip. She was going to another church up in Texas, up in Austin, Texas. And I was waiting for her, and I wanted her to be there, but she wasn't. But I knew it was time. So I walked up there, and my spiritual mother, she says, "Are you ready?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I'm ready." Sorry. So that was the day I accepted Christ into my life for the second time. And my spiritual mother looked at me, and she saw a complete change come over me. She says it was like in the spirit. She's never seen anyone completely change in the spirit like the way that she saw me change. So after that, I accepted Christ for the second time. And I remember I had to leave the sanctuary, and I went to the restroom, and I got on my knees and I prayed. But I had all these thoughts telling me, like, "Oh, you did this and you did that and you did this. You can't be forgiven for this." And it was like a floodgate of all of my sins that I have completely forgot. Even as a small child, stealing a small cookie out of my grandmother's cookie jar when I was a kid. I remembered that. I even repented for something so small as that. For anything and everything I could think of. It was like a floodgate of things. Just, I didn't even remember. I repented for all of that. And I stayed. I didn't run away, and I stayed. And I would have to say it was one of the best decisions that I made. One of the best decisions I made in my life. And I'm very grateful to my spiritual family. Because after that, I was still staying with my friend, but I knew something was changed. I couldn't step into that house without it making me sick. It made my stomach hurt. I would go and sleep and lay down on the couch, but my stomach would hurt. I felt sick to my stomach. When I left the house, I felt fine. If I ever went back, I felt sick to my stomach. Couldn't sleep, like a big knot in my stomach. I would go to sleep and I'd wake up and it was still there. So one night I'm like, I can't take this anymore. I gotta go. So I got up in the middle of the night and I walked, it's about a good mile, maybe a bit longer, to my spiritual mother's house. And I didn't even know if the door was going to be open or not. But I walked in and the door was open. And I laid on the couch and I fell asleep and I felt better. And my spiritual mother woke up and she said, "Son, what are you doing here?" No, actually she didn't. She wasn't even surprised that I was there. She just woke me up and says, "Are you hungry? You want some breakfast?" And I knew that's where I was going to stay. And I knew that that was my spiritual family. And they really helped me. They helped me, and I love them so much. And I love my brother Michael because, you know, they were good people, and they still are good people. And didn't know. They had no. I had no idea that the door was going to be open. So I started staying there, and my buddy he tried to come up and get me and take me back home, and I told him, I said no. I said this is where I'm going to stay, and this is where I'm going to live. And the craziest thing happened. Like, this guy's huge, big old deer head, tattoos and piercings, you know, big old metalhead. And I love him to death. But he was afraid. It was weird. It was like I seen his whole body just shake in fear. And he looked at me and says, like, "You've changed." I'm like, "No, I haven't." I said, "Yes, you are. You changed." He says, "You're one of them. You're a Christian. You effing Christian. You're an effing Christian. Who are you? You always cower. You just basically these demons coming out of him and telling me how Satan was going to punish me, basically, how my God were going to punish me for converting to Christianity, how I was weak and how I would cower and how I would, all these things. But I was very calm, and something happened. My heart broke, and it broke for my friend. So when I was crying, I wasn't crying for myself. I was crying for him. And I've never felt that before. I've never felt my heart break for someone because I didn't know how to love. And for once in my life, I really truly knew what it meant to love someone, to truly fully love someone. And I loved him, and my heart broke for him because of that situation. And we parted ways, and it was years that we actually started talking again. But we talk now, and so hopefully everything will still stay civil. When I started living with my spiritual family, I started having these new ideas and these new thoughts that I never thought I would have. I looked at my brother Michael, and he was like, "What if God had a name for us? What if he had a special name that he would give us when he wanted to speak with us?" And my brother Michael said, "Well, that's in the Bible." I'm like, "No, it's not." He's like, "Show me." He's like, "Show me." So only reference I can remember is like he pulled it up, and he's like talking about the white stone, how God gives us a special name when he sees us again. I'm like, well, that's kind of interesting. So I have all these new thoughts, new ideas. And he says, "You've never read the Bible?" He said, "No." I said, "Honestly, I'd rather burn one." And I did. At one time, I torched the Bible, like I said, before I was a Christian. And one day, we go to this place called Lifeway, or Pathway. I think it was called Pathway. And it was a Christian bookstore, huge Christian bookstore, which is a church now. And I go up to the teller up there. I'm like, "Hey, I just converted to Christianity. What do I do now?" I mean, I said, "This is what I used to listen to. I used to listen to Cradle of Filth, Damn You Borgia, damn you, right? Venom, all kinds of black metal. Beautiful music, but unfortunately it was very satanic, which made me sad." Huh? Yeah. Typo negative. But anyway, I still love Typo negative. I listen every now and then. But I didn't know there was a different alternative instead of what I was listening to. And the guy says, "Okay, well, let me pick some things out for you." I'm like, "Okay." So I think one of them was like Project 86. I can't remember the second one. Could have been Zao. But the band that really actually started me on this Christian metal journey of exploration, as you will, was Becoming the Archetype. It was their first album. I'm sorry if I can't remember the name of the first album, but I'm sure you will. And it was so cool. So I put it in all I hear was the organs, you know, just, and you know, it was like, and like, I'm like, my brain exploded. I'm like, what is that? You know, and I'm just like, I'm having my own private mosh pit in a listening booth. I'm just tearing it up, you know, and people are walking by me. I think they were terrified, scared the bejesus out of them. The guy walks in like he's going to have some authority over me about my own personal headbanging concert. I looked at him and I said, I'll take it. He was like, okay. So that was my start. I went from Demon Hunter. I went from becoming the archetype, went from Demon Hunter, War of Ages. I mean, you name it, I'm on it, you know. Broken Flesh. Thank you, Broken Flesh, for the t-shirt. Great stuff. Have you ever heard of them? Sleeping Giant. Yeah. Saw Sleeping Giant. I saw them in concert.
You saw For Today a lot.
Yeah, I saw For Today a lot. Yeah, they used to come to Tampa, Florida a lot. I used to live in Tampa, Florida. Now, if you want to go to some places with some hardcore, heavy metal Christian music and local bands, Florida, Tampa, Florida. I'm telling you, that's where I saw them all. But you know, after that, my life was never the same again.
When did your baptism happen? When they saw the rainbow?
Oh, okay. So before, you know, even after I became a Christian, I was still like what you call a baby Christian, and I made a lot of mistakes. But don't want to get into my whole entire life because that's just another book.
Yeah.
I found myself being homeless. I went to go stay with some people that lived in Albuquerque, New Mexico, which I thought were my family. They weren't. And I wound up being homeless. Then I met a guy, a buddy of mine. His name is Art. I call him Pops. He was older than my dad. Really great guy. And we decided to head off to California. Honestly, I was trying to make it to, you know, the home of Solid State Records. California. Seattle. Sorry. Seattle, Washington. No, Seattle, California. Yeah. Okay. I'm sorry. But you know what I'm talking about. So, I landed up in San Francisco. And that was a culture shock. Oh my goodness. I was homeless. Sleeping in a homeless shelter. Thank God I always had food. Thank God that I never had to sleep out in the streets. And started going to a church there. Don't remember the name of it, but started going. And all I can remember is 3 days from my baptism. I was sleeping in the homeless shelter. And I heard this voice, this big booming voice. It says, Peter. It says, wake up. I wake up from my sleep. Everybody else is asleep. I look underneath my cot. Nobody was there. I mean, if I would have woke up, whoever it was would have been staring at me right in my face. And I would have punched him. Yeah. And I go back to sleep. And I hear that voice again. It says, Peter, it's time to wake up. Wake up. Nobody's there. Go back to sleep again. And it says, Peter. Louder. This really loud, booming voice. It says, Peter, wake up. Wake up now. It's time to wake up. And I woke up and I said, yes, Lord. Didn't say much. But I got to go back to sleep. I just acknowledged his presence. I think that's what was most important. 3 days later, I got my baptism. And I renounced, you know, a lot of my ways still. You know, shedding off that skin. And somewhere between, maybe coming up, coming down, three girls at the same time said they saw a rainbow over my baptism tank. Now, these are grown women. But when I was looking at them, for some reason, they looked like children. Like teenager girls. Little teenage girls. But they were grown women. You know, I'm like, okay, well, that's cool. I'm glad you saw that because I didn't.
What did they say?
They saw a rainbow over my baptism tank. And I knew that was a unique thing. I know Peter. And I know the rainbow represents, you know, God's, you know, promises. And, you know, call me Peter 3 times. 3 girls, 3 days before my baptism, then the rainbow. I mean, oh, there's something to it, obviously. And as of now, that's pretty much all I can remember. So this is my testimony on part of my life.
And that's just part.
And that's just part of my life on how I became a Christian and how I realized that I didn't have to change. Because when I accepted Christ in my life, I didn't know what I should do. Should I just take off the black, become a square, listen to, whatever music, and the most important thing that Georgia ever told me and ever could tell me, and I want to tell you guys the same thing. Whoever you were when you were in this world, whatever you did when you was not a Christian, when you become converted to a Christian and you accept Christianity and you accept Christ into your life, you be that same person, but you do it for Christ. Whatever you're doing, you flip it around and you do it for Jesus.
Amen.
And you will never go wrong. All right, you guys have a good night. God bless to my Christian community and metal family. God bless. Have a good night. See you next time. Peace!